What is up, all you mutants out there? Welcome to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays with Kelsey and Dill, or as we like to call it, Marvel-ous Mutant Mondays for the time being, because we are talking about the X-Men yet again. Kelsey, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jill. Sorry. I have the giggles.
It's okay. We get the giggles sometimes. I mean, I'm wearing an Office shirt. I've got Star Wars behind me. I've got Marvel behind me. I'm a hodgepodge of things today. This is a giggle-full podcast, especially because some of these movies are heavier, so it might be good that we keep up the giggles
Yeah, you're right.
for today. As you can see, not my usual set, but, I'm in the process of moving. Lease is ending, lease is starting, where we're figuring it out, but we make it work every Monday here on the channel. Lots of cool videos coming for you on the channel, but you are here to hear about Marvel talk. Every week we talk about Marvel. We start with some news. So, Kelsey, do you have any news for our lovely listeners or viewers out there?
I mean, I've just been pretty stoked this past week with the amount of Loki teaser trailers we've been getting. We got a 30-second recap from Tom Hiddleston. I don't know if you watched that, but he reminded everyone of everything that has gone on in Loki's life leading up to his series. We talked about the clock that everyone bugged out about on the poster for Loki. I think her name's like Mrs. Time, I think, something like that.
That would make sense. Yeah.
We got a closer look into Owen Wilson's character. It's just, I'm ready for it to be here. I'm ready to start watching Loki.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're keeping up that idea of you don't know what's going on, it's going to confuse you, which I like. That's the same thing WandaVision did. Whereas I think Falcon and Winter Soldier was very much like, you kind of know what you're getting into, and you kind of knew what you were getting into every week. It was still enjoyable. But this show feels much more in the vein of WandaVision, where it's like, what the hell is going on? That will make it exciting, I think. Are you excited for the fact that it will be on a Wednesday? Because we kind of got into it a little bit a few weeks ago. How are you feeling about that? Because I'm thinking of it as someone who stays up late to watch them, and I know that is not the ideal experience. But are you excited to get it a little bit earlier than usual?
You know what? I am. I mean, it's 2 days, so it's not that much earlier. But I'm just kind of confused why they even did that. Maybe it was something with scheduling, probably. Maybe they thought that Loki ended too close to Black Widow being released. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, because I think the problem they'd run into, if I kind of mapped out the Loki schedule in case they do double up like they did WandaVision for a few episodes. I didn't commit to it, but I did look at it, and one of them would have overlapped with Black Widow. So I'm wondering if you're right. If having it 2 days earlier, then it's like you have 2 days to talk about Loki, a few days to talk about Black Widow. The thing is, we've talked about it a little bit on the show. If we run into that, we have not yet discussed whether or not we will just do a double episode and give you 2 episodes, a Loki review and then a Black Widow review, or if we will do the Black Widow review, save the Loki episode for the next week and talk about 2 Loki episodes together. Probably the latter, but we'll see in terms of time and in terms of what happens, because we are seeing the movie together. We are seeing Black Widow. We're waiting for those tickets to go on sale, but we will have a Black Widow. I know that is going to be what people want to hear about that weekend, and since we do our show on a Monday, we will be talking about Black Widow that weekend, and any Loki stuff we'll push to the next weekend, or we'll do a second show for that Monday. It'll be a double Monday, which would be crazy. But
double feature.
Double feature. So my news is a little less futuristic and a little more reflecting on the past of these past 2 shows we've gotten, and that was the MTV Movie and TV Awards. They don't mean much, but in this case, they actually meant a lot to Marvel fans. I'm just going to run through all the Marvel shows and Marvel actors that won, not necessarily for Marvel stuff. First off, WandaVision wins Best Show, Best Television Show, just period. Won very well-deserved. Chadwick Boseman, not for a Marvel show, but won Best Actor for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Elizabeth Olsen won Best Performance for a show for WandaVision. So what they did is, instead of doing actor and actress, they combined them into one category. It's just Best Performance in a movie, Best Performance in a show. So it was Chadwick Boseman. It was Elizabeth Olsen for WandaVision. I do like that. I like how it's becoming.
I like that a lot too. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, we saw Elliot Page nominated for Best Performance in a Show for the Umbrella Academy too. So it's like, instead of running into that, box where it's like you can nominate someone as an actor or actress and having to define yourself as one thing, I think it is really nice that they were just able to group them together. And have both actors and actresses, or those who don't identify as either, in the category and have a competitive shot. Some other awards. Anthony Mackie wins Best Hero for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That is a category. And Catherine Hahn wins Best Villain for WandaVision. Best Kiss, none of them were nominated. Best Fight, Wanda versus Agatha. So we saw the two of them, Elizabeth Olsen and Kathryn Hahn, win a second award together for WandaVision. And they made a joke about how it should have been Best Kiss, and then they almost kissed, and it was all funny. Best Duo goes to Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Well deserved.
They didn't nominate Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen. Maybe it's because they didn't want inner competition between the two. And I think that's it for Marvel. Yeah. So MTV Film and Movie Awards, you're doing a good job.
Big night for us.
Yeah, great night for us. All right, but you're here to hear about the X-Men, where we're stepping aside from the MCU, even though they will eventually be part of the MCU someday. We just don't know when. Let's talk about these three movies. We're talking about the Wolverine Trilogy. So this is X-Men Origins Wolverine, The Wolverine, and Logan.
Yes.
Three very different movies, but similar because they're all Wolverine movies. It was hard because these movies are spaced out throughout the different trilogies. So like X-Men Origins Wolverine came out right after the first trilogy. The Wolverine came out in the midst of the second trilogy, and Logan came out at the tail end of that.
Yeah.
So we just figured let's just combine them all and make them their own trilogy, because they kind of are. So Kelsey, what are your overall thoughts of Wolverine and like the idea of having his own like movies, just as a standalone character? Because we've talked how he fits in with the group itself.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, with X-Men, the first, like the 2000 film X-Men being like the first ever X-Men movie we ever got, you definitely need to do a deeper look into this character. They basically were setting it up from the beginning that he was going to have some standalone films, that they were going to do the most in-depth background story type movies with this character. So I feel like they were kind of necessary, and I enjoy Hugh Jackman, so like I will always enjoy a Hugh Jackman film. I think that he's really good in everything that he does. So as far as these movies go, I mean the first one I really don't have any problems with. Actually, I have a few problems with. As in like X-Men Origins.
Okay.
That movie. His first movie, it just feels very like, it was full of cliches, full of like a lot of like action movie stuff. It was fine, whatever. The Wolverine totally loses me. I feel like it is so random. I don't know. It comes out of left field for me. But then they just absolutely knock it out of the park with Logan. It's kind of confusing. They take you on this roller coaster of emotions throughout the entire trilogy three movies for him. They're not really a trilogy.
We'll call it a trilogy for this sake,
Yeah. But yeah, those are my overall thoughts.
Well, those are some, I wouldn't call them hot takes, because I'm sure there are a lot of people in your ballpark, and I think a lot of people agree, speaking of ballpark, that Logan does not get out of the park. The other two movies, it's interesting because I'm kind of the complete opposite. I think X-Men Origins Wolverine is one of the worst superhero movies ever made, and I think The Wolverine is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So I think it's interesting to talk about as two people. And again, I'm watching these movies for the first time, except for Logan. I did see Logan multiple times in theaters because it was one of those movies where, even having not seen all the other X-Men movies, I was still excited for. I still wanted to see how Logan's story would end. But the other two I haven't seen before, so it is interesting. And we will get, when we talk about The Wolverine, we will talk about one thing that I think might have made the experience better for me and not for you, but we'll talk about it when we get there. Let's start, though, with X-Men Origins Wolverine from 2008. Kelsey, why don't you give us your very brief breakdown, your synopsis, whatever you want to call it. And then you can dive in a little bit more into your thoughts.
It's very brief. We see the events that take place in Logan / James's life that lead up to him becoming the Wolverine.
All right. I will give you, the thing is, I'll give you a disclaimer. I have followed this like franchise. Having not seen it, I followed a lot of word of mouth on this franchise, so I kind of knew going into this would be bad.
Okay.
Having known that, I think it does make me a lot more like on the bandwagon. Yeah, it sucks, but I think having not known that other people didn't like it, I don't think I'd be as negative on it, but I do think I'd still dislike it. If that makes sense. Like I hear what you're saying. I dislike it even more because of all the word of mouth that I've heard throughout the years about it, and especially in context with the other movies. I think as a standalone movie, it's fine. Like it's not anything special, but I think it's one of those movies that if you take different pieces of other movies and try to make it make sense with this one, there's a lot of things that this one contradicts, and we'll get into it a little bit more.
Right.
One of the biggest things being that the whole X2 story with Stryker is that after he got that procedure done to him with the adamantium, he doesn't remember anything before that.
Mm-hmm.
And in this movie, it seems like he very well remembers everything before, because then after the process is done, he recalls things that happened before it. So that's where my first issue is this whole mystery of Logan and him not knowing where he comes from and only knowing that one moment, and that being his birth as the Wolverine. I felt like that immediately just took me out of it, just knowing that they're totally contradicting that aspect. But that's also my brain, like kind of what we said with Days of Future Past. It's like, if you're willing to kind of let those things slide, it's a more enjoyable experience. But I think this movie especially does less of a good job of trying to navigate those changes to the continuity in the timeline, if that makes sense.
No, I completely understand what you're saying. This movie's full of like plot holes and like not continuity like at all. Like, it definitely, because like, and also like Scott Summers, like what's he doing in this movie? Like this is not his origin at all, you know?
Well, and it's interesting because we talked a little bit when we were talking about X-Men Origins, the fact that this movie was so critically panned and such a box office bomb, they literally were like, oh, scratch it, we're not going to do this. We're just going to do a First Class. So the reason First Class happened is because this was such a failure that they literally were like, we're just going to start from scratch. We're just going to do the First Class. And that's where you get like the Scott Summers story and Apocalypse and all that stuff.
Right.
But then again, we're judging this as it exists. So we've got to judge it as part of this timeline. And again, like the Scott Summers thing, it's like they're trying to do what they did with First Class, but do it very, subtly, but it doesn't really add up to me. The Scott Summers stuff was just weird, especially because I do think it was coming off the backlash of his death being so horribly handled in The Last Stand that I think they were almost trying to make up for it in that sense, but then they don't give him much development here either. It's a mess. But keep giving your thoughts, because I do want to hear a more positive perspective on this movie.
I mean, my perspective isn't that much more positive. I just like didn't walk away being like, I hated that.
Right.
Because I went into it with not many people telling me their opinions about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just kind of it exists in my eyes. That's how I feel about this movie. I'm glad
you did have that experience, because I wish I could have gone in blind to it. I wish I could have seen it for the first time. And I think a lot of movies suffer from that, from word of mouth, knowing it's bad going in. How do you feel about it, rather than experiencing for the first time? There are movies in the MCU that I'll see for the first time and be like, that wasn't great. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? I loved it. And it's nice. But if I hear about it beforehand that it's going to be great or bad, that's what was so special about like WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is because everyone was kind of experiencing it at the same time,
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So for me, Dale, my biggest problem with this movie is that it just feels, I literally wrote this down in my notes. Wrote this down. This movie is full of men directed by men, and you can smell it. The testosterone is unmatched, and not in a good way. It just feels so like, manly and action and explosions, and he's walking away, and it's literally like, cool guys don't look at explosions. Like it's just the testosterone is palpable in this movie, and I'm just like, oh my god. There's only one woman character in the whole film, and she dies. She dies in the beginning, or like not in the beginning, but like in the first act.
Early on. It's early enough that I looked at the time and I was like, wait, what? And it's one of those things like Deadpool does it too in Deadpool 2, and we'll get there when we get there next week. But Deadpool 2 does the same thing, but you had that whole first movie to develop Deadpool's love interest, whereas here it's like, you have no time, and honestly, I didn't see any chemistry there. So it's like when it doesn't make you feel anything when she's gone, but then when she comes back, it's not like this whole like, oh my god, thank God, or oh my god, I didn't see that coming so crazy thing. Talk more about that.
So then she dies off early on, and then it's literally just him and all men, like the entire rest of the movie. The only two like female characters I can think of in this whole movie is the girlfriend, whose name I cannot remember because I just simply did not care about her, and her sister.
I'll find it while you talk. Yeah.
Which is, I know her sister's name is Emma, because in my notes I said, is this like a prequel to Emma Frost? Because it's the same name, they look the same, and she has the same abilities as Emma Frost. So were they trying to give Emma Frost some sort of prequel here?
Her name is Kayla, by the way.
Kayla, yes. because every time he yelled it, he would like yell it so dramatically and like so like aggressively. I was like, I can't understand what name you're yelling. And then like and so we start with the team of the guys, and it's this guy team up, and Stryker literally comes to Sabretooth to, I think his name is Vincent.
Vincent Price. Or no, that's the name of a classic movie actor. I'm getting there in a second. Victor Creed. Victor Creed. Sorry, I was watching some old movies, and Vincent Price was in one of them, so he's fresh on the brain.
I get it.
I don't know why I'm going decades earlier, but go ahead.
I understand. And then Victor and Jimmy get approached by Stryker because he starts off as James/Jimmy in the beginning of the movie and is basically like pulling a Nick Fury, saying, I'm putting together a team of people, like, I want you on it. Puts together this team of mutants, but not all of them are mutants because Wade Wilson is not a mutant yet because he didn't go through his like cancer treatments yet.
Well,
so he's just like good with swords.
Yeah, in the continuity of knowing what happens in Deadpool, no, he's not yet. But in this context, maybe they were going for the fact that he was already mutant, or I don't even know, because he doesn't have cancer. They don't say it in this,
right?
But like it's assumed. We got to talk about Deadpool.
Well, Ryan Reynolds kills off that version of Deadpool anyway, because he's like, that guy doesn't even exist. We're not even talking about him.
And there's a reason, because this Deadpool is just, like, they try to make him funny, but the jokes are not funny. I never laughed. And he's so funny as an actor.
Yeah.
But it's very clear that they gave him the material, and it was not the right material for what we know as Deadpool now. And even back then,
for
like,
sure.
The fact that he is supposed to be like the merc with the mouth, and the fact that they seal his lips shut, and it's supposed to be this powerful moment, like, oh man, they silenced him, they sewn his mouth shut.
Yeah,
you don't know enough of him, and the material isn't funny enough. If he's cracking quips like he does in the movie Deadpool earlier on, and you're like laughing out loud to see him sew his mouth shut, it could get more of a visceral reaction from you. But the fact that his jokes weren't that funny earlier, it doesn't have any sort of emotional payoff, and they do it so quickly. The CGI when he fights also is just there's lasers out of the eyes. It's like that mid-2000s like really crazy CGI. Poor Deadpool in this movie. Just, I mean, we're skipping to the LVM right now. He's my LVM just because like, they waste his character so much. They treat his character, and especially if you have a different actor, fine, but especially having Ryan Reynolds in the role at the time, you had so much gold that you were sitting on that they just like let go to waste, you know?
Oh, yeah, and I just remembered, and then the girlfriend turned out to be a mutant. She had abilities, which wasn't even that good of a reveal, because first of all, I don't remember it happening. Second of all, I don't remember if like Logan knew when he started dating her that she was a mutant. I don't think he did. So then the fact that she was revealing to him that, oh, also I'm like you, I have abilities, should have been a way bigger deal, and I don't even remember it happening in the movie.
And I don't want to be that guy, but I think because the performance is flat, it's not as sold. You know, I don't think the performance is good. I'll be honest right here. I think Hugh Jackman's the only good performance in this movie. Maybe Liev Schreiber as Nightcrawler, maybe.
Really? You don't think Will.i.am didn't knock it out of the park in this film, Dill?
Is that sarcasm?
You didn't enjoy Will.i.am?
Sorry, not Nightcrawler, Sabretooth. I get them all confused. See, that's the point, is I didn't even remember the name Sabretooth, and he's the main thing. Also, the humor itself. We talked a little bit about Deadpool's humor not being great, but the humor itself is just not great. Like with the Blob thing, when he's like, Bub, and he's like, did you call me Blob? And it's like, like this, the exchange is so stupid. And like, it's all this stupid humor that I hate.
And also, why was Sabretooth going to like pick off each members of the team? Like, why was he going after them? I think I wrote that down. I was like, why is he killing? Because he kills the light. He finds the light guy working at the freak show. He kills him. But then Blob is alive, and then he meets Will.i.am, and it's like, oh, dude, like the team fell apart. Like the boy band broke up, like the Beatles, like, it's just so I walk away with more questions than answers, and we're supposed to be getting answers about why Wolverine is the way that he is.
The whole existence of the film is to answer all the questions.
Exactly.
But did we need the answers? Did we need those questions? Because I think part of the beauty of Logan is that there's a mystery there. There's a mystery about his character, where he comes from, his origins. The mystery of it is what makes him so good. So to have this origin almost fill it out, it almost makes him a lesser character. And I'll admit, like, he's never going to be, like, he's always my top 3 favorite mutants. I don't think anything will ever change that, even if they do recast it for the MCU, which they probably will, because Hugh Jackman's getting old. But, like, I just don't think that this movie does him a service. As good as he is, he tries so hard to elevate it, but even he, like, this is his weakest performance in the franchise, and like it just was, it was going to be, no matter how hard he tried, just because the material is so bad. But again, like you did say, it was like totally fine. Like I do think having that perspective of someone who had heard all the criticisms beforehand, I did kind of give it an unfair, like, hatred even going into it. I shouldn't have done that, but even at the end of it, I was like, no, this sucks. Like, and that's just me, but like, I don't want to be mean, but like, I was just like, yeah, this sucks.
I just walked away being like, okay, that was a super intense, like, action movie, where I feel like none of the MCU films or any of the X-Men movies, like, previously that we watched before, have really felt heavy with, like, action, like, movie. There was still elements of, like, sci-fi and, like, you know, creativity.
Drama,
exactly.
humor,
things like that, where this one was just like, it's an action movie and we're all on steroids. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is a lot.
The action doesn't even feel that inspired. And we'll get into the action in the next movie, because that action I do really like. And I think it's because of just the nature of Wolverine himself and what he is as a character. It's like, I always think putting the PG-13 always restricted Wolverine from being as hardcore as it could have been. And I do like how they try to lean into the action, but I don't think the action here is that impressive. The whole thing just feels like a jumbled mess to me. But even then, it's like not even enough of a mess to entertain me. It just feels like kind of just a boring blah mess. Like, it's weird. It's really weird. And even Apocalypse, like what we talked about, I didn't like at all. But I think there were still strengths to that, like the story with Scott and Jean and you know, and Professor X. Like, I think there were still strengths to it. Whereas here, it's like, I'm trying to think of the strengths beyond Hugh's performance alone, and I just can't. I don't know.
I hear you, Dill. I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
So you said your LVM was Wade Wilson.
Just for the sake of his character just being completely wasted, especially in the context with Deadpool as well.
No, I get it.
Movies,
yeah. So, also really quick before I say my LVM. So the girlfriend, before she dies, like, grabs hold of Stryker and says, walk until your feet bleed and then keep walking. But aren't they on an island? So did he just, like, walk right into the ocean? And if so, okay, you can, I guess, walk against the ocean floor, but I think the pressure, like, will build so much that you'll, like, explode. And then he's walking in the end credit scene, like, untouched, like, perfectly fine.
Yeah. So it's another example of just they throw things in there that don't need to be in there, that just confuse it even more.
Because it's like, you have that ability. Why don't you just grab onto him and say, like, pull, like, get the gun and pull the trigger? Like, why tell him something like that? Because of course, like, we needed him to be alive because he's in what other movies does Stryker come into?
X2 is the next time you see him.
Yeah. So they needed
in Days
him.
of Future Past as well because of the time jump.
Right. So the next time we see, like, an older Stryker is X2. So they're like, okay, well, we can't kill Stryker off in this movie, so we have to do something else with him. But then the thing that they do with him, like, doesn't even make sense.
And then the whole point of Stryker in X2 makes no sense because Wolverine in this movie remembers the girlfriend. The thing is, like, if he had gone out of his treatment or whatever and had the metal claws or whatever, and then was like, who is this girl? And she was just like, I used to be your lover or whatever, and he forgot it, it'd be like, fine. But the fact that he remembers her, it's like, that's the whole thing with X2 is that he can't remember before that. And like, that was a traumatic moment. And I don't know.
That being said, my LVM is Kayla, is the girlfriend.
Okay. Yeah,
because
that's fair. That's totally valid.
they just, like, they were horrible with the way they treated, like, women in this film. This film did not pass the Bechdel test at all.
No,
there weren't even like a scene with two women in it. Name one. Show me it. I didn't see it.
Who's your MVM? And for those who are listening for the first time, maybe I hope you're a returning listener, but if you're a new listener, welcome. The MVM and LVM are the most valuable and least valuable mutants. So that's what this code stands for. Who's your MVM?
I mean, Logan.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, great.
It's hard to find anyone else, even when like Deadpool is fighting well at the end, and like even though Sabretooth fights well, like it's no question.
Yeah, it's his movie. I feel like it's got to be him.
Yeah, but even in future movies, especially the last one we'll talk about, there are still other mutants that like are very great and well handled. But yeah, it's Logan, no question about it. Speaking of, let's transition now. Oh wait, let's first give it a score, right?
Yes, I gave this. I'm a little upset, but I did give this a 5.5.
Wow, out of 10?
Yeah, out of 10. No. Okay.
So you put this above Last Stand and Apocalypse?
I did? Wait, what's
our... You gave those a 5. I have it all in here. I have our past rankings. So you gave Apocalypse...
I'm impressed.
Well, I also have it written down, but not with me right now. But yeah, you gave Apocalypse and Last Stand, I think, a 5 out of 10. Because I remember I gave Last Stand a 5 out of 10. I gave Apocalypse a 3 out of 10. I
still think that it kind of functioned well as an action movie. Even though like super intense action movies aren't my cup of tea, I still think that it had peaks and valleys. Obviously, the CGI and the fight sequences are a little outdated because it's from 2008. But I still think, like I said, I didn't walk away and go, ugh, I hated that. I walked away and was like, well, that was a movie I watched. That's what I thought, Very indifferent towards this one.
So you sticking with a 5 out of 5, or do you want to lower it? Do you want to keep it at a 5, 6? What are you thinking?
I definitely don't want to say... I think Apocalypse is worse than this one, but Last Stand might be better, so I might be putting it in between Apocalypse and Last Stand.
All right.
So, what'd you give it, like a 1?
No, I gave it a 2 out of 10.
Okay. Sorry, my bad.
So it's like 1 star out of 5. Like it for me, it just doesn't work. And I think it's along the lines of like Fantastic Four, the new one. And like, I'm trying to think of other movies. It's like along the lines of, it's like just some of them, just huge misfires to me, where it's only salvaged by Hugh's performance and Hugh's performance alone for me. So I gave it a 2 out of 10. I think it's a smidge worse than Apocalypse, because Apocalypse, at least the better parts of Apocalypse, I like enough. This one, I couldn't. So we can talk about it now or at the end on where we're going to fit it into our overall ranking. But right now, it's very clearly the bottom of this Wolverine trilogy. Correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you did say actually. I was going to say you might not feel that way. Let's transition into the next one.
We'll see.
Let's talk about it. The Wolverine in 2013 standalone movie, really standalone completely in terms of style, in terms of actors and characters. I did say earlier that there's a reason I might have liked this more, and it's because when I rented it, I accidentally rented the extended edition. Which is it looks like this. If you're renting it, if you see this poster, this is the extended edition poster.
Yeah.
So I watched it. It was actually 2 hours and like 30 minutes, opposed to like the 2 hour 10 or whatever. So it was like 20 minutes longer, not totally longer. And the extended edition, like it added maybe 1 or 2 scenes of drama, but it added a lot of blood. And I think that was the thing that I was really intrigued by. It's because this whole time Wolverine has one of the coolest fighting styles, and could get really nitty and gritty and dirty with his fighting. And this was the first movie I saw, obviously not before we see Logan, even though I had seen Logan. Before Logan, this was the only one I saw that really dove into those like gritty, gross, grotesque horror sequences, like action sequences. And honestly, like you said, you're not into the whole like hard action movie. And like, honestly, I'm not really either, but I do think the addition of this more darker, gorier type of story, I think worked a lot for me. But Kelsey, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I am obviously glowing about this movie, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I love when we don't agree, because it's interesting hearing out the other perspectives. So Kelsey, tell me a little bit about it before I dive into my thoughts.
Okay, I'll give you so it was directed by James Mangold. We got some new directors for this 3 movie set, and trilogy. We didn't say the other Okay. I know. I probably just should have, instead of stumbling over what I was trying to say. And X-Men Origins, The Wolverine, if anyone was curious, is directed by Gavin Hood. It was bothering me that I didn't say that before, but this one's directed by James Mangold. Okay, here's my synopsis. Logan finds himself in Japan where he thinks he's saying goodbye to an old friend, but then ends up protecting a young woman from the Japanese mob. And that being said, one of my notes is, I hope Dylan can explain this plot to me, because I didn't get it. I just felt like Logan and the plot just felt so disconnected and detached. Like, I feel like it really could have been like a separate movie just about the Japanese mob and this young woman taking over her father's legacy and company and everything like that. And like, the Wolverine didn't have to be in it at all, which is not good, because the movie's called The Wolverine. So you should feel like the main character should be there. And I just walked away from this movie being like, what was that?
I think the integral part of the Wolverine is the whole fact that this man wants to survive his cancer. And so he needs Wolverine because he has that lifelong, like, never dies thing. So the whole point of Wolverine is to get that, the youth, and to basically switch, because Wolverine, his whole thing is that he hates living with that. So it would kind of be a no-brainer for him, for his friend to be like, well, just give me that and I'll give you what I have. But again, Logan knows that it is painful. As great as it is to live forever, there's a pain to it. There's a pain to having to feel the bullet but still survive it, like, and I think you see that in the very first scene when he's getting scorched, and you see him kind of give him that look, and he's amazed. His friend's amazed because he's like, wow, I wish I could be like that. But then Logan, you see the pain in his eyes where he's like, no, it's not. It's almost a curse more than a blessing. And I think that's what's interesting about this movie. And that's why I think he is vital to the storyline, is because there's that whole idea of, is it worth it to have these powers, even though you face so much trauma, and some of that trauma being also his having to kill Jean Grey. And I think that's an intriguing plotline that they bring into it too, as he's trying to move on from that.
Right.
I agree. You could have used any hero in this story, but I do think it works because of the whole, being able to survive the wounds and regenerate your cells and live. That makes him integral to this particular story. I agree. The interesting thing is, this does not feel like a Wolverine movie. This does not feel like a superhero movie. And I do honestly appreciate that a lot. If you don't take Logan, before Logan came out, this was the most different thing I think any of these movies has felt in this universe. And I do like that. I like how it felt so unique and separate from everything else. It kind of just was a way to kind of just dive into Logan's story and character, having him go on this other journey, but not necessarily having to have it be part of this bigger picture. And I do argue that a lot of this does set up what he later experiences and comes to terms with in Logan itself.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the action, because I think that is the strong point of this movie. I think taking the inspirations from samurai films and from other westerns, like it definitely is a cool genre blending where it doesn't feel like just a generic action movie. It has some real style that calls back to the old like Kurosawa movies and even like old kung fu movies, like the way the style is done with the swords and then with the different samurai elements. Like I really like that and the inspiration it takes. And we'll talk about it a little bit more with Logan too. I think James Mangold does a good job making it feel like its own genre rather than just a superhero movie. It's like a superhero western or a superhero samurai film, and that's what I really like. I mean, that bullet train sequence is just epic.
Yeah,
they're on the train and he's kind of jumping off and like flying through the air almost. Like that shit is so cool. And we get a little bit of that also like later on, with the arrows sticking in his back and he's walking with the arrows. Like those sequences are just so good, and they don't feel like generic action sequences or superhero movie sequences. They feel like a real love letter to these older Japanese samurai stories. So I really like that angle. And I think just the uniqueness of it and the fact that it is different and it's so different from the rest is what I really dug about it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, just in the action and then like also all the rest.
I did write down, I used the exact word you did, Dill. I literally wrote down, this train scene is pretty epic. So I'll give it to that. And I remember thinking that the first time I watched this movie was, wow, that was really, really cool. I think my issue with it, and I get the whole granddad thing that he wants, like Logan's powers and ability to heal. And I think what just makes it random for me is that he fakes his death to then end up in this robot, because I guess this is plan B, because he was expecting Logan to just be like, oh yeah, sure, here's my bone marrow or whatever he would have to give. But since he says no and declines like pretty almost immediately, he's like, all right, plan B, we're faking my death. We're getting me in that robot. Viper is like there, but she's also on her own agenda that I'm not sure what is. Also the Archer guy who like runs, who's like the head of like the other Archers. What was his whole thing in that movie? I don't know. And then like the dad of the daughter, what's her name? Oh my God. They said it so many times.
I'll look it up while you continue your thoughts.
Mariko or something? Mariko? Something like that. But then Mariko. They said it so many times, I should be able to say it right. But he literally said her name so many times. The dad like doesn't like Logan, like tells him to leave, and then he like throws the fiance. I wrote down, the dad is dead. The fiance was tossed into a pool. Who is this Archer guy? What is his relationship to everything? It passed me. It went right over my head, whatever that guy was doing. And I just feel like it felt more random than it did like cohesive. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it just with like, I don't know. I guess what happens in this movie can be seen a little bit in Logan, but I have to disagree with you, Dill. I don't see it. I don't see anything that like takes place in this movie in his performance or in Logan's character development, like at all in Logan, because I just feel like Logan is so separate and detached. Like they're like, we're scratching everything. It takes place in 2029. This is what's going on. This is where Logan's at. And now like mutants like aren't even a thing anymore. Like I just feel like they really went back to the drawing board with Logan, as they should have, because I just feel like the first two movies were just not that impactful. Yeah.
And that's fair. Like again, like movies are so subjective. Like it's just the nature of it. Also, I do think it has to come down to also the fact that you said you're not like a huge action person, and that's kind of what I dug the most of this movie, which is the style, just the overall style, like setting it in Japan and having these different types of scenes. It's much darker, and like I said, I watched the extended edition, so maybe it's a little more dark than what you saw, but I do like the commitment to this darker type of storytelling for this character, because he's always felt like kind of the secret ingredient of this X-Men. But we've never really seen him on his own. And even in X-Men Origins Wolverine, it's like a lot of just explaining the stuff we already knew. We've never seen him kind of come to terms with this idea of, do I want to have powers or not? And do I really want to live forever? And I think this is the first film where we kind of see him kind of go through that, like, wow, maybe I don't want, like, maybe this is hurting me more than it's helping me, having to live like this. And yeah, it's tough because that's the thing with Wolverine. He's such an involved character, as much as it's like some people would like to say he's one note. He's just this guy who gets angry and has these slashers and can fight you, and he's also kind of cool and badass. No, I think there's a lot more rich substance to him. I can see how you think. Like, again, I've seen Logan on its own before this, so like I do agree Logan can stand completely on its own, but I do think this only richens it, because then when he is older and he is coming to terms with the fact that he is dying, I think it is important for this film to be kind of the start of that and him learning what is worth living for, because he has the easy option of just saying I'm done now, but he kind of realizes throughout the film that he does have more of a purpose. And I love that moment where him and Mariko are in the kind of cabin or the house together, and like, he's wounded and she's putting the robe on him, she's tying him, she says it's wrong, and he's basically telling him like, I really didn't have much worth living for. And then she's like, do you now? And then they kiss. And it's like, he doesn't answer the question, but you can see that he's kind of finding more ways to celebrate life and enjoy what he has. That was a really nice moment for me. I mean, I think because I just watched it, like I'm coming fresh off of it, I did like it a lot more. But I'm wondering if rewatching it, and then especially in the context of watching everything in this franchise, how it'll feel to me. But I did dig it. I thought it was very cool stylistically, and I do think it brought some interesting stuff to his character. But, you know, I agree, Viper is a weird character. Do you know what her name is in the comics, though?
No, what is it?
It's Lady Hydra.
Oh, really?
They couldn't use that name because Hydra was already claimed by MCU at the time, I think. Well, let me just double check that. Dr. Green Viper, she's known as Madam Hydra, formerly known in the comic books as Madam Hydra. So I think that's interesting too. Is wondering like, will they bring Julia Louis-Dreyfus to have these powers in the MCU now that the X-Men's done with Fox? Who knows? I thought it was interesting though.
Walking poison.
Right, and I do love that scene where she shreds her skin. Like I just think it's really cool.
Yeah,
like, it's like it's icky, but like it's cool. It's like this movie just has so many cool elements that like I agree with you. Sometimes the story doesn't always make sense. Sometimes there are characters that don't need to be there, but I do like how they at least stuck with a clear vision of what they wanted to do.
Sure,
and making it different, and you know, embracing the fact that it was a different type of film. But yeah.
And that's not to say that I don't like action sequences. It's not like every action sequence I'm just like, oh, this is bored. It's just that a lot of the action sequences in X-Men Origins of Wolverine felt very unwarranted. Right. And it just felt like this is very much like, okay, well, what else is he going to do?
I think these definitely do.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about your LVM?
Yeah. It's tough because this movie is not as plentiful with the
mutants, right? So I'm kind of looking at it more of like your favorite character and like least favorite character.
Right. I mean, I did pick a mutant because there are 4 in this movie. There's Wolverine, or 4 as we know. There's Wolverine. There's Viper. There's the I'm forgetting her name, the one who can read minds, or who can see in the future.
Yukio,
yeah.
Yukio.
She's I really like her. And then Jean Grey, obviously. And I do think I would have to go with, as my LVM by default, Jean Grey. Just because the other 3, I think, do serve a really interesting purpose in the story. Even though Viper is kind of a more generic villain, I do think she's a scary villain because she literally puts that thing in his heart that literally eats away at it. And I love that sequence where he's digging through his heart and he just like pull it out while Yukio is fighting off the other guy. Like I really, really like that scene. So that it's kind of by process of elimination. It's Jean, but I do think Jean has some good moments in throughout with his whole psyche and with his whole pathos and like him, you know, making this decision to, you know, put certain things in the past and embrace certain things and also fear certain things and kind of accept that, you know, he'll never be the same after this movie.
Right.
Yeah, I think Jean is purposeful, but again, you don't necessarily need her in the movie. You can have him kind of almost flash back to her and it would still be kind of the same. But I do like that extra touch of her. But, you know, process of elimination, that was my least valuable.
No, yeah, I agree with you, Dill. I mean, you have to, I had to remind myself that even though we had already watched Days of Future Past before this, Days of Future Past did chronologically come out after, literally 1 year after this film. It came out in 2014. But The Last Stand came out 7 years before this film. And they make it function like the events of Last Stand, Wolverine is just coming off of those, and they're either like, if not weeks, then only months old kind of thing, you know, and he's still struggling with the fact that he did have to, you know, sacrifice Jean to save the world. And you kind of have to remind yourself of that as to like why he's dealing with this in this movie, which I kind of, you know, I agree with you. It wasn't the strongest. I think that he could have just been, you know, being Logan and he's just like always at a constant war with himself, that Jean Grey didn't have to be in this movie. Yeah. But for me, I kind of hinted at this in the beginning when I was talking about how useless I thought he was in this film, but my LVM was Logan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Because I think with you, I was having the same issues with like there not being a lot of mutants in this film, even though I just said I was thinking of it more as least favorite character, but whatever. That is not what I thought when I picked out my least valuable mutant, because it was Logan, because I just think that it didn't have to be his movie, and I thought that the other characters surrounding him were a little bit more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, my MVM, just because I really liked her a lot, was Yukio.
Okay, I mean, I didn't pick her, but like she's a great pick. Like talk about Yukio, because she's great.
I just think that she's super cool. Like, okay, my problem with this movie is that, and all of the X-Men movies so far, is that they have all ended, maybe besides the original trilogy, but also, no, I'm going to include the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
They have all ended as if they're going to set up certain characters to be in the next movie. You know, this movie ends with her getting on the plane and saying, "Hey, I'm your bodyguard. So where are we going?" And Logan's like, "Well, let's just start with Up." And she's like, "All right." And after that, he's like, we'll see when we get there. So they're totally setting up like a Yukio and Logan team up movie to come, and it never does, and I don't think it ever will.
I think that's poor franchise planning too. I think the franchise, I've always said this, and we've both said this, that it doesn't feel like they know 2 steps ahead. They know the next step ahead, because as we see, there's a post-credit scene, which we can talk about in a sec, that sets up Days of Future Past, because they had already filmed it. You know, it was coming out the very next year. But in terms of 2-3 years down the line, they had no idea what they were doing. They probably didn't even know they were going to do Old Man Logan yet. That storyline, you know, and they end up doing that, and it ends up being amazing. But like, yeah, it doesn't seem like they really planned out the future as much, and so they do this a lot, where they set up a character like this is going to be a big character, and then you don't see them again. They did this with First Class too, especially with, you know, Caleb Johnson's character. I forget his name. The one who glides in the air.
Banshee.
Banshee.
It's the second time I've reminded you of his name.
They do it with Banshee too, and that was the one I missed the most in the next film. They do it with a lot of characters. So even Scott Summers, even though he's in that third movie in Last Stand, they do it with him too. He's not in that movie. He shows up for 2 seconds and is dead. I don't even think he has a line, if I recall. He probably does, but you know,
you're talking about Scott,
yeah. Like he's someone who's set up to be a bigger character. That, you know, they do this all the time, and I just think that's poor franchise planning. And honestly, I think. I don't want to be that guy, but I do think Society, this is a cast of very diverse actors. And I think Society might not have been rushing to go to the theater because they were like, it's a story set in Japan. I don't really like that. It's not my cup of tea. And I think there's a little bit of that kind of unfortunate bias that a lot of Society has, where they weren't rushing to the theater to see this one, especially because X-Men Origins Wolverine was a failure to many.
Sure.
So I worry that it didn't get the right box office. Even if people were flooding to the box office, I don't know if they did respond to it as well for some of those elements. I know you have other reasons why you don't like it, but I think a lot of people didn't necessarily like it because there was that language barrier at times, and you know, reasons they should not be knocking movies off for.
Right.
You know, I think that's one of the biggest strengths is the fact that it's in this new area. You know, you have a lot of diverse cast. Like this is the most diverse cast in this whole thing, and I love that. But I'm worried if maybe that's why they never made a sequel with the 2 of them, is because of that. Who knows?
I just think she has a badass introduction scene. She meets him in the bar, and she's like, "Don't worry about them. They're going to die soon." She does some slicing with this sword, and then like everything collapses at once. And yeah, I just think that she's really cool. I did think that her and Viper be like battling in like the epic showdown was a little bit weird of like a pairing, because it's not like they were kind of butting heads the whole film, so you kind of felt like satisfaction. I mean, like you still want to see Viper lose because she's been like, you know, an antagonist the whole film, but her going up against Yukio, sorry, just like didn't feel as satisfying to like watch her get her comeuppance that way.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
And it's interesting because Yukio, like we were kind of talking about with Rogue a few episodes ago, like this is not necessarily a character that's going to be your first pick on a team for fighting.
Yeah,
but I think for the overall arc and like the story and what she brings to the actual story, it's really interesting. And I do think that's why, I know you keep saying like Logan didn't need to be here, but I do think, you know, he is here, and we got to judge it like that. And I do think with him, like kind of questioning this mortality, because it's a lot about that mortality aspect. Like when is it time for me to finally want to die or whatever, when this idea is presented to him. And she's the one who basically tells him, I see you die holding your heart in your hands. And it's kind of like one of those moments where it's like, wow, like she's important for that aspect, because she kind of makes him see that he is gonna die, and it's kind of just a matter of how and when. And then it turns out that she's wrong, but is she wrong? We'll get there in a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a beautiful. I think when you watch these two movies back to back and you like kind of put some things together, it's like whoa, which we'll talk about in a sec. But you know, it's interesting because I do think she's not the person you'd pick first for fighting team, but I do think she has a cool purpose in that story because of that. My MVP is Logan, just because I know I tried to pick a different character I did pick a different character for the next one, don't worry. But for this one and the last one, it's Logan, just because I love, you know, they bring new layers to him, and I get it. You know, your criticism, I get it 100%. But for me, I really liked it as just exploration of a deeper side of Logan, you know, kind of dealing with the traumas of his past, but also kind of preparing for the future and what he does want with the rest of his life. Because you got to imagine also, like, with losing Jean, but then we'll later see in Logan losing a lot of other people. And then Charles growing old, like it's probably tough to watch your friends come and go. And I think he's feeling the same way toward the guy that he saved all those years ago. So when he's saying goodbye, he doesn't know it's a betrayal, and it's kind of sad for him because he's you know, been the same age as this guy at a point, but now this guy's older and he doesn't get that. You know, he has to watch his friends die, and he's probably had to watch it a lot, because we see in X-Men Origins, that title sequence, he goes through so many wars. You know, it's sad. You know, it must be sad to be in his shoes. So I picked him as my favorite, and because of the fighting itself, like it's just so cool. Him taking all those arrows to the back. You know, the scene where he does come face to face with her father, the grandfather's son, the middle guy. When he basically kind of charges at him, he basically lets him go. He's like, I'll let you die on your own. You know, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to let you live with yourself. And then he charges at him and he's like, fine, shoot, you know, like sticks his fingers in his throat. It's like, it's so cool. And especially with the unrated extended edition, it's really cool. So I went with Logan.
What was your score for this one, Dill?
You might be a little surprised, but I gave this an 8 out of 10.
Wow, I am surprised.
I'll admit right here, right now, of the ones we've talked about, not taking into account Logan yet because we haven't talked about it, it is my favorite.
I am shocked. I know. Okay.
I know. I put it above X2. I put it above First Class. I put it above Days of Future Past for now. You know, with time it might change, but I know you're gonna have a different opinion. So lay it on me, Kelsey.
I cannot believe you like this one better than like Days of Future Past. Anyway,
I did.
Well, I walked away. I kind of watched Wolverine, X-Men Origins, and then the Wolverine kind of back to back. Logan, I watched literally last night. So it's fresh on the brain, but I walked away. I don't know why, but I really disliked this one more than I disliked X-Men Origins.
Wow. Okay.
But you've kind of sold me a little bit. I like how this one obviously had more female actors in it. I felt a little bit more represented in this one. So my score on the page right now is a 5 out of 10.
Wow.
But I am willing to bump this up to a 6 out of 10.
Okay. And that's great. You know, you're putting it on par. I'm looking at your rankings. You're putting it on par with the first X-Men.
Yeah.
The OG. So.
Yeah. Which I feel good about. So we're definitely going to have to talk about our overall ranking.
Yeah. But right now, it seems like we both agree that this is better than Origins Wolverine right now.
Yeah. I can get behind that.
Yeah. For me, it's the style. It's just such a distinct style. And I know he brings also a distinct style to Logan, James Mangold, who is amazing. He's done other great movies, 3:10 to Yuma, Walk the Line. He just did Ford vs. Ferrari last year. Like he's done a lot of great films. And I think it's that sense of style and kind of those callbacks to the traditional samurai films of like the 50s, 60s in the style of fighting and the actual atmosphere. I loved it. So this will be fun to talk about later, though, when we compile our big ranking for sure. But let's talk about the amazing elephant in the room, Logan.
That's such a good picture. I haven't seen
I'll
that.
put it up one more time. Audio listeners, go head to the YouTube. Head to the YouTube because you'll see that beautiful photo. Masterpiece.
yeah. In a word, masterpiece.
Yep, masterpiece. All right, go ahead, Kels. Give us your breakdown, your little summary.
Logan came out in 2017, directed by James Mangold yet again. Clearly he did something right if he came back to do the third one. So honestly, Dill, you might be seeing something that I don't hear. Here's my synopsis. In the year 2029, when mutants are virtually extinct, Logan must help a young mutant named Laura escape to a place called Eden.
Nice. Great. Just the idea that it's called Eden. Like, the thing that we talked about with even the last movie and a few other movies of they set up things that they want to pay off later, but then they never pay them off. This movie does a good job of making it open-ended enough to where you know that the characters in it, like these kids, will grow and will evolve and like will have a future, but it does not directly, distinctly set things up where it's like you must have a sequel. Because we didn't even talk about the post-credit scene of the last movie where he runs into Professor X and Magneto at the airport.
Yes.
Like how it's set, it's very clearly setting up Days of Future Past. And it's kind of a cool moment, but it's very clearly just to set up and excite people for the next one, make people go, wait, they're working together, Magneto and Charles, and like, oh, Logan's going to be in that one. Oh, they're going to go, something's happening. Like, it's a good teaser, but here it's like, it ends and it feels like the end of something.
Yeah.
But deep down, these characters that you just grew to, like these new characters that you just met, they will have a future. They've made it to Eden, all this stuff, but it's not like it's a commercial for a new movie. That it could have ended here and it does end here, but it didn't have to, but it doesn't, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm trying to say.
No, I know what you're saying. Because it makes you, it leaves you being like, obviously sad about Logan, but also like hopeful for those kids. So it's a nice bittersweet ending. I honestly, I didn't take many notes on it because I was just obviously like entranced with watching it. It was my second time watching it. Let me see the little notes that I do have. If we are saying that the Wolverine is directly connected to Logan, shouldn't one of his claws be like half seared off from that robot?
Technically, Days of Future Past takes place after the Wolverine.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And he has claws in that. I've actually researched this because I wondered the same thing. I said,
okay,
come, in Days of Future Past, how come he has the claws again? And I think the very clear explanation, the most valid explanation that people online have speculated, is the fact that now he's working with Magneto in Days of Future Past. Magneto was able to get some metal and make it happen. That's the most valid explanation I've seen, is that Magneto was able to help him get his claws back. And that's about it. Because we do see in Days of Future Past, he has the claws before he goes back in time and has the bone, But that was a question I did have too. But yeah, I think that is the most valid, probability. So.
All right, I can get behind that explanation. All I have to say about this film, Dill, is that the stakes are palpable. They are so high from start to finish throughout this film. Like everything is life or death. We learn right off the bat that, Logan's obviously been feeling like suicidal. He's walking around with this, the metal bullet that's the metal he's made out of. So it's like virtually the only thing that he knows can kill him. He's walking around with that. Professor X is going crazy. He's having these seizures that's basically harming like anyone in like a mile radius. I'd say I just put up my arms and you can see how badly I'm sweating in my basement right now. Please ignore that if you're watching the video. Well, I don't want the audio to be bad, so I'm sweating it out for good audio.
Well, I'm gonna meiosis this air conditioning through the camera to you. Hopefully it works.
We'll see. I don't know. Professor X is like going crazy. He's having problems. Logan is trying desperately to help him. He's raising money so they can escape on this yacht together. And then he finds out about these poor kids that have been raised in this like factory/hospital that are being trained to be soldiers that they're completely abandoning because they're working on X-24 anyway. And now he's like, he has to be the saving grace yet again and help these kids, even though he's pretty sure that everything that they're looking for is a crock of shit from a comic book. It's just, it's layers, man. It's an onion. It's an onion, this one.
It's one of those movies that doesn't necessarily state everything that's happened. It doesn't go into exposition, which I like. You know immediately by the fact that like it's just Wolverine and Professor X, you have a good inkling that Professor X killed the rest of the X-Men. And that's just knowing the comics also, but like, you know, it's very clear that there are no other mutants around, and it's like kind of that lingering question of why. And then when he has that first seizure, it's kind of alluded to that Wolverine was the only person strong enough to withstand it because of the way he is, because he doesn't die immediately. And one of the questions I always had was like, so was he always going to die? Or was there something that weakened him? Was it the Professor X seizures, or was it a little bit of what Viper gave him in the Wolverine that like stuck with him and made, you know, that question's not really answered, but I don't think it matters. And the good news is like the story does a good enough job of just saying this is how it is, roll with it. And I think it's kind of like Days of Future Past, where it's like there are plot holes in the time travel, but like if you can look past it, fine. Like if you can look past the idea of like, I thought he wasn't ever supposed to die. Like how is he aging? All this stuff.
Right.
Like, I think if you can get past those questions and just say, well, the movie's telling me he's aging, so I'm just going to go with it. I think that is powerful. And like some comic book fan will probably correct me in the comments and let me know why Logan is able to die all of a sudden, even though the last movie said he wasn't. It doesn't have to do with the last movie. And maybe that's why I like the last movies, because I thought maybe that had to do with what he's experiencing now, that like kind of parasite on his heart. Who knows? But I do like how a lot of it's unsaid. Like it's very alluded to that like the rest of the mutants are gone, like there's because they talk about this big accident, and it's assumed like if he had it at the school, mile radius, and he killed all those kids, like I mean it's scary to think about, but the fact that they say like no new mutants have been born, like it's very, very probable that he was the one to do it, which makes him even more of a complex character, I think, in this movie than maybe any of the other movies since Professor X.
No, I agree. This one's definitely more graphic than the previous ones. Yeah, than literally any other movie we watched. There's a lot more blood in this one. There's a lot, you know, we see claws literally go there. They enter through the chin and we see them exit through the skull. It's just a lot of like, ooh, like, ooh, like coming from the audience watching it.
And this is what I was kind of talking about earlier about how like I love how they finally embraced what Wolverine's fighting style is. It's gritty, it's nasty, it's pulpy, it's gory, it's bloody, and they commit to it here. And I think it's the R rating. I think they use Deadpool as their experiment to say, will an audience show up to a superhero movie that's R rated? They did, and then they said, okay, we can do Logan. Because I don't think they would have made Logan if they couldn't go all out. Because there is something about the fact that he's older and the fact that he's dropping F-bombs everywhere because he's kind of fed up. And, you know, having Professor X curse, it feels weird at first, but then it's like, no, this is like an angry grandpa and his son who he's like, I'm fine. Like, don't worry about me. And it's like, no, but you're not, dude. Like, and it's like, come on, what the fuck, man? Like, but the ability to just say the F-bomb and not have to censor him, because Wolverine is never someone who should be censored. And I think that is what every movie to this point, not necessarily has suffered from, but has lacked, is that just what Wolverine is and what he can do with his claws and with his mouth. And I think that is why this movie is so impactful, because they can go 100% into the grittiness of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I have to say, this movie makes me cry, man. It's sad. I mean,
told you, I said that's why I was late to the stream today when we were recording, is because I was wiping tears off my face and making sure I didn't look red and puffy eyed, and had to take out my contacts and put in my glasses because they were puffy. So yeah. And like right off the bat, like, because it's like a young girl who he's trying to protect, like anyone with a soul, like you're immediately invested. You're immediately like, oh my God, like she's got to make it. She's got to get to the end. Like, and then the fact that like they have this figurative like father-daughter bond, and then it turns into a literal father-daughter bond because she's literally his spawn. And then like the rest of these kids in the fight scene, like I was watching it late at night. I came home from work. I was like, I have to at least start this movie. I started it. I got all the way up to like when they finally get to like the camp site where like all the kids are waiting North Dakota. North Dakota.
And I was like, I have to save this like final fight scene because I know how this ends. I have to save it for the morning because I just can't go through all this right now, you know? And oh my God, the scene when Professor X dies, and then it's not even his death scene, because obviously, like, when he's his like final words are literally like, our boat, I forget the boat's name, but
that's a good trivia poll if you were able to what is that? I gotta know.
Wait, it's something like, it's called like the Windbreaker. It's not that, but it's like something along those lines.
Keep talking, I'm looking it up.
Okay, look it up because I need to know it too. And he just like, his last words are just like, oh, what we were gonna do together and all that. But then what,
the Sunseeker.
The Sunseeker. See, I was kind of close to Windbreaker.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
The Sunseeker. Yeah, that's his final words. And then when Logan buries him and he's trying to get out, he's trying to say some final words for Professor X. He's just trying to say, like, he starts to say something along the lines of like, it's by the water, we're close to the water or something. He's probably alluding to the fact that they were going to, retire on this boat together, and he just can't do it. He can't do it. He gives up. The hand holding motif from when Laura sees the mannequins holding each other's hands in the Vegas casino, wherever they are. Mm-hmm. And then she grabs hold of Professor X's hand, and then she grabs hold of Logan's hand. That scene almost made me curious if more was written in the script and if Hugh Jackman just like couldn't get through it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Because it's also like, Patrick Stewart's not going to die anytime soon, knock on wood, but like, he's older. They're all older. They've been through this franchise for, at this point, 17 years. So it's like, there's a lot between them as a family, and that's why it's always tough. And that's why they were probably, they knew this was their last. When it's your last film, and as a character like Robert Downey Jr. in Endgame, like there's a different personal stakes knowing this is your character's last movie. And they bring that 100%. Talking about tearjerkers, I alluded to this earlier when Yukio says, I see you die with your heart in your hands. He dies holding Laura's hand.
That is almost comically upsetting.
I think they didn't necessarily know what they were going to do, but once they made the decision to make Logan, once they decided how he was going to die, I think they said, you know what, this is going to, let's have him die with his heart in his hands. And it's like, oh, I'm like tearing up now. It's like, it's just so emotional and rich. It's something with kids, because Iron Man 3 has the kid, and it's like, oh yes,
it raises the stakes. They raise the stakes.
Endgame, Morgan Stark, Ant-Man, Cassie Lang. Like, there were so many things that a whole nother layer. Onions, ogres have layers. They bring so much layering to these characters with this child like thing, because it is this next generation. They didn't know what they were going to do after this. They didn't know Disney was going to buy them and they were going to have to stop making X-Men movies a few years after this. Like, they probably thought maybe there's a future for these newer characters to kind of be the next future of X-Men, because these actors are getting old. Patrick Stewart's old, Ian McKellen's old, even Hugh Jackman, who is not old, is too old for this role,
right?
To really be going all out years later. So it really is interesting to see how they deal with mortality, but also this newer generation of kids and how they kind of make the parallel and bridge the gap between them. The scene where Professor X dies, though, in that house, that whole house sequence is so great, because it's like in the confines of a house, but that's where the most of the action in the movie takes place. This is not an action-filled movie. This is quite the opposite. And honestly, watching it this time, I noticed more action than that I thought there was. There is fighting from the get-go with him beating up those guys on the side of the road. There's the fighting, the car chase when they're trying to get Laura and Professor X out of there. There's, there are moments of action, but that's not what this movie's about. But the fact that, they still do have such good action in that confines of that house is really, really nice to see. We could talk about more of the characters too, because I think this is the hardest one to find an MVP, find an LVP for, because or LVM. I don't think there's really a least valuable member of the team. I really don't.
No, I don't have one. I didn't even write one. So
I didn't either. And I think it's because realistically, if we're looking at kind of like in the terms of the movie, who is causing the most harm, Professor X with his seizures is. But for the context of the story, as a viewer, he is vital to the story. I would never say he's the LVP.
Right.
And then you look at the other mutants. I mean, what's his name? Oh my gosh.
Caliban?
Caliban. I love his character. He doesn't get a lot of screen time.
Caliban.
He doesn't get a lot of screen time, but he's vital for the story because he has to make the decision of, do I want to die for these people that I don't love, but I care for? Because it's clear he cares for them when the sun is literally eating at his skin, and then he makes the decision. He's like, yeah, no, I've got to do it. And then he leads them to him. But then at the house, he ends up taking that ultimate sacrifice because he ultimately does realize that he cares more about them than he cares about himself.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, this is a side character we've never met in this franchise that we still now immediately connect with. And love, you know?
Lots of Caliban love. I'm a Caliban stan.
Stephen Merchant is great. He's the guy who invented The Office, so thank him. He's primarily a comedic guy, but you know, when he does drama like this, it works.
I was going to say, you can tell because my favorite line from the whole film, not my favorite line of the entire film, but one of my favorite lines is when he's talking to Logan and he's like, I know you're planning to kill yourself, but if you could, like, I just cleaned up around here. If you could not, just do it in the house. And Logan just I didn't even get to my favorite line yet. Logan knocks the mug out of his hands and he just goes, that was my favorite mug. I was like, I wrote it down because I was like, oh my God, that's just hilarious. It was just so subtle and it was just so like, it was just thrown away enough to be so impactful.
He plays such good bit roles. He just directed a movie last year, Fighting with My Family, with Florence Pugh, where he basically plays the father to, the movie's about two kids who are in the MMA, I think, WWE, that's it, not MMA, WWE, and one of the kids has a girlfriend or a fiance whose father comes to meet this family, and he plays the father, and he's just so awkward and uncomfortable. He also directed the movie, but he stars in it as this, and it's really funny to see him as this like uncomfortable, like awkward guy at this dinner table. He's also in the movie Good Boys as like a pedophile who comes to buy a sex doll from these little boys who are trying to make money.
Yes, I watched Good Boys.
He's like the guy who comes to buy the sex doll. Like he's always in these little bit roles. So to see him do something dramatic, but also bring that kind of comedic tweak to it is really nice.
No, for sure.
What were you going to say earlier, though? I think you were going to say something.
I really don't remember. We were talking about I don't remember.
Yeah. And again, like kind of, we got to talk about James Mangold's direction, because I think the last one I said it kind of felt like not just a superhero film, but a superhero samurai film. This one is not just a superhero film, but a superhero Western. You know, it takes a lot of, tribute to like the Western style, kind of that gritty, very like you almost feel warm watching it because like you see the blazing sun and the heat and the desert and like kind of this cat and mouse thing. Like these guys are chasing these guys around and like there's dirt paths. Like it has a lot of Western influence, but again, because it's a comic book movie, you get to like kind of experiment with the actual action itself and make it interesting. But it's the most non-comic book movie I've ever seen. And I think that's what works so well for its favor, is that it feels so different. It doesn't feel, nothing's a green screen, and you can tell. And if it is, good on you, because I didn't realize. Because it doesn't feel like it's a green screen. I don't think it is. It just feels so raw. That's a good word for it, raw. And there is another version out there called Logan Noir, which is all black and white, that they re-stylized and recolored to make it more of like a noir Western film, which I need to watch because it sounds good, and it's on the Blu-ray I have, so I might watch it someday.
That does sound good. It's on the DVD that I see back there.
Yes.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah. So just a really great movie. Like,
I have a feeling that we both have the same MVM.
Is it Laura?
Yeah, it's Laura. Yeah. I mean, we haven't even really talked about her. But
I figured we would here. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Great. Because what a powerhouse. I'm like so jealous of this young actor who will probably work way more than I ever will. And I gotta
look up what else she's done since, because she needs to get work ASAP. Okay. She was on that show, His Dark Materials on HBO. I gotta watch that because she's so good.
No, she's so good. And it's just so delightful that she spends like virtually the entire movie. She doesn't talk until like the third act of the film. Virtually spends the entire movie silent, and then all of a sudden she starts talking, and it's like endless. She's just like pouring, and like that's one of my favorite scenes in the car is when he's like, thank you for like taking me to like the hospital or whatever. And she just goes, de nada, and he's like, you can talk, and then she just like starts rambling, and he's like, all right, shut up, I get it, you can talk, and then she's like hitting him, and he's like, don't hit me.
It's almost like he's talking to her as if she's an equal, and we've always seen this with Logan himself.
Yes,
like in the first X-Men or the second one with Rogue, when she's like, I gotta leave, and he's like, well, I'm not your dad, so I'm not gonna tell you you can, or you shouldn't. He's like, go for it, as your friend, go for it. And he is very clearly older than her, but it's kind of the same thing here, where it's like there's this younger person that, yeah, he's her father, he legitimately actually her father, but he's almost talking to her as if like they're equals. Like he doesn't see her as a minor, which is interesting, which is powerful. And we got to talk about the comedy itself. This is a hard R movie. A lot of gore, a lot of action, a lot of deep Western deepness. I don't know the word, grit, but it's got some comedy when she's stealing the shit from the store, and he's like, no, and like he puts in the thing in the thing she's riding outside. She goes to like explode it or whatever. Well, it can't explode it, but like tear it apart with her two little claws, like. Stuff like that is so funny, and it's kind of this interesting three-person dynamic with Professor X, who's trying to like calm him down, and him who's trying to adapt to this one and kind of like put her in her place, and she's just kind of taking it all in and learning things for the first time. The sunglasses, she's great. It's just so funny, and for a movie that is so heavy, to see that humor is just great.
It's so delightful. You almost like forget, like this is Laura's first time like being outside of the hospital that she grew up and was raised and like created in. I can't even like say raised, because she wasn't raised by anyone. She was just like created and just lived in this hospital. So then, she has this very sweet moment with the son of the family that helps him out. After that traumatic horses scene, if one of those horses got hit by a car, I would have turned the movie off. I can't deal with that at all.
And that's where we see Professor X kind of being more valuable too. Like you see him actually help with that. Anyway,
exactly. I was gonna say, I can watch blades go through people's skulls all day long. If I see any animal get hurt, no, the movie's going off. I'm not doing it. 100%. But she has this very sweet moment with their son when she's, literally just looking around things in his room, and she like so sweetly and so innocently just leans so close to him to like, cause she doesn't know what an iPod is. She's just like listening. She's like, oh my God, he can hear things like through those little things in his ears. And he's like, do you want to listen as well? And and
unfortunately,
really great.
A moment that's sweet and comical then becomes almost the reason why Professor X dies, because she can't hear. She's listening to music. And that's when X-24 comes in. That's unfortunate. I mean, that whole scene is sad. You did bring up the family, and I did want to say one thing. For any of my 80s comedy friends out there who have you ever seen Coming to America, Kelsey?
I haven't. I've been meaning to get around to it.
Watch it because it's really funny. The first one. The second one's not great, but the first one's really good. This guy on the right here, Eric LaSalle, is the actor. He's the same guy from Coming to America who plays the boyfriend of the love interest. So that's him on the right with the red. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're on sound, please go to YouTube because it's really cool. There's Eddie Murphy in them, and then that's him again. And he popped up. I was like, where do I know that guy from? And it was from Coming to America. So it's great to see him getting work too. That family is really nice. That whole sequence kind of grounds it because it's kind of this whole chase throughout, but it's nice for them to kind of stop at a point and have that moment. And then he has a great moment where they're at the water well or the pump station or whatever they're at with the water, where they run into those other guys and they tease him. And then he kind of just, what does he do? He bends the gun. He knocks it in half with his knee, and then later X-24 literally slices the guy's head off.
Honestly, you're almost rooting for X-24 in that moment because those guys were assholes.
Yeah, they were assholes. But like every time I watch that moment where his head just gets sliced off. I'm like, oh, I literally gasp every time, and I've seen this movie like 4 times. And again earlier when Laura comes in with the head and rolls the head, I'm like, I gasp every time.
No, yeah, the first ever time we don't even see her use her powers or her abilities or anything, but she just like walks out ever so casually. First of all, the entire time those men are infiltrating like Caliban and Professor X's and Logan's like house, makeshift house type of thing. She's just so calm and collected. She just looks at them and she's like, no, not this today. And then she just walks out and throws the guy's head and is like, really, you thought like those guys were going to take me? She's just such a badass, man. I could watch a whole nother movie with Laura and those kids. Like, I hope one day it comes.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, I think they do a good job making it open-ended enough, like I said, that they could do that. But again, if and probably when they decide we're going to reboot it with Disney and, this is going to be its own franchise, which I think it has been kind of accepted as it is, which is unfortunate because of that. But they do leave that door open where they could explore her character. And I hope, even if this is the end of this X-Men franchise, even though there are 3 movies that follow this movie, Deadpool 2, New Mutants, and X-Men Dark Phoenix, I do think this is a great finale, though. If this is going to be the end, this is a great finale to this overall story. I do think we have to mention, even though he wasn't our MVP, we have to acknowledge Hugh Jackman's work in this whole franchise, because this is really a crowning achievement. In terms of actual performance, he's probably my favorite performance, just because he brings so much more nuance to this role than ever before. And I did have something I wanted to share with you, Kelsey. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but the magic of the movies is so marvelous. And marvelous. That's our title. But the way they film some things are just so fun to watch. So after they film the scenes, they put Hugh Jackman in a booth. They play the footage, and they basically have him make all the sound effects of his action sequence. I'll show you what I mean, and then we can talk about it. So here's a little clip of Hugh Jackman doing the sound for the famous running through the forest scene.
I love that. Wait, I had no idea that's how they do it.
So he probably does it on set, but the thing is, he's so directed to do all these things. I don't have a video, but there is really cool footage of them actually filming the forest stuff, because he needs to run fast. They kind of put not really a treadmill, but they put like wires on him to make him move faster than he's actually moving. But again, like in that moment, you really want to prioritize the actual physical acting first, because it's so involved, that afterwards they do this stuff in post, and it's so funny. Like, it's great, but it's also so funny to watch, because he's like,
it is.
And then at the end when he breaks out, he's just smiling,
and he's just like, oh hey, like he's like, I didn't even know you were recording.
And he's running in place too. The thing is, like, he could just be like, just breathing.
No, he's giving it his all.
Fully, he like does all the punches, the slashes.
He's committing to the bit for sure.
I think he's one of the most committed actors I've ever seen, because he does this. He does musicals. He does dramas. He just did Bad Education last year, which was phenomenal. Like, he does so many great things, and he's just incredible. He is so incredible. This was the role he was born to play, and this is probably the last time we're going to be talking about Wolverine. So I do want to end Professor X. So the two of them, Patrick Stewart, Hugh Jackman, they are incredible. And I hope we see more of Wolverine down the line with another great actor they pick for the MCU, but I don't think anyone will ever they might match, but they'll never pass what he did with this role.
Yeah, for sure.
Man. So our MVM is Laura then, right?
Yes.
All right.
I said / Caliban just because I love him so much.
Yeah, I love Caliban as a character and just as a presence in the movie. He's great. So I don't blame you for that either. What do you give this out of 10, Kels?
I give this a 9.5 out of 10.
Oh, okay.
The only reason why I took off, I literally wrote this minus 0.5 just for sadness, just for the emptiness I feel inside for losing them. Because we didn't even talk about the fact that when Logan's dying, I almost said the actress's name, Daphne. excuse me, Laura says, "Daddy."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I held off from talking about that because I didn't want to get emotional, but
Sorry, I had to bring it up.
yeah, I mean that is so
You
good.
told me the heart in his hand thing, so I had to bring
Yeah.
up the daddy line.
Well, and then the T
that
becomes an X,
the
like
X.
oh,
Just
that
twist
movie,
the knife while it's in there, why don't you?
that movie year 2017 had some of the most emotional finales I've ever seen. The first one that comes to mind is this. Second one is Coco, came out that year. Devastating ending, amazing ending, but devastating.
Yeah.
Call Me by Your Name came out the same year. It literally ends with the character crying into a fireplace while the credits roll. Same year as Shape of Water. Won't spoil much about how that ends, but that's also sad. Same year as Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's the last movie with Carrie Fisher, and one of the last moments is Luke and Leia having an exchange and like meeting each other with their eyes. This is the year of sad movie endings.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of this one for sure. This is such a good ending because it's so simple too.
Yeah.
But, you know, and while Logan wasn't the X in the X-Men, like that was Professor X, it's almost kind of like an ode to both of them almost when she puts on the X because, wow, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
And,
what did you give? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say when he says, like, this is what it feels like, too. It's kind of like that whole thing he was struggling with in Wolverine. Now, when you see him dying here, it's like almost like he's at peace with it. He's almost finding the most comfort he's ever had in the whole franchise.
Yes.
In this moment, because he's holding his heart in his hands and he says, this is what it feels like.
This is what it feels like.
He goes.
And then he says something along the lines of like, don't be what they made you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, if that's the last wisdom that Logan can give, that is everything that he's tried to embody his whole life.
I think it's perfect. 10 out of 10.
I was really going to give it a 10 out of 10, but the sadness that I feel, I took off half a point.
And I don't think any X-Men movie will ever or has ever come close to this, even though we will talk about two that I know you really like and, you know, two that I really like as well next week. I just think this one is just so special, so different. So
yeah,
it doesn't even need to be a superhero movie. Kind of like what you said about the Wolverine, where it doesn't even need to be his movie. This is the same thing where like you can take the claws out of it and like it would still be great, you know, just because it's a story about father, daughter, old man, you know, everything else. So I gave it a 10 out of 10. So for this trilogy, it's very clear: Logan, Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine. But now we got to funnel it into the main ranking. I think we can safely say Logan's at the top, correct?
Yes, for sure.
So Logan's at the top. So now we got to funnel in the other two. Let's first funnel in X-Men Origins Wolverine because we got to figure out if it is worse or better than Apocalypse and Last Stand. I ranked it lower than both, but you ranked it the same as both. So right now, how we have it is Apocalypse at the very bottom and X-Men Last Stand above that. Talk me through it. What are you thinking?
I am comfortable with X-Men Origins being at the bottom.
Great, it's done.
Great. The Wolverine, however,
I
do not agree should go above Days of Future Past.
Right.
I don't even think that it should go above First Class either.
Right now, where I have it in my personal rankings, it is because, spoiler alert, I have seen two of the movies we'll be talking about next week. It is my third overall in the franchise. So behind Logan and then another Merc with a Mouth we'll be talking about next week, his first movie. So, but again, I haven't rewatched them, so it might change next week. But right now I have it at third in my overall. I agree, for the sake of an X-Men movie, I'm willing to put it below both of those, Days of Future Past and First Class. The question now is, does it go below X2? I have it above X2, but according to your scores, you would have it below X2. What do you think?
It can go above X2. I can compromise.
Really? Okay. Cool.
I can compromise.
So right now, our updated ranking, so we've gone through 9 of them, right? Yeah. So
yes.
At number 9, we do have X-Men Origins Wolverine. At number 8, we have X-Men Apocalypse. At number 7, we have X-Men The Last Stand. At number 6, we have X-Men from 2000. At number 5, we have X2. At number 4, The Wolverine. At number 3, X-Men First Class. At number 2, X-Men Days of Future Past. And at number 1, Logan. I hope I got that right because that was all off the top of my brain.
No, that I was looking down at my list. You're right.
Cool. And we will have a graphic put in for YouTube when I edit this. Podcast listeners, you're missing a lot of good visuals with this episode, so please head over to YouTube if you want. So next week, we will be talking about two very different films. I mean, these were different style films, but this is totally different breed of superhero movie and comedies in general. We are talking about Deadpool and Deadpool 2, starring the one and only Ryan Reynolds, who has done such a disservice by X-Men Origins Wolverine. I can't wait to see him actually get to do funny jokes this time.
Yep.
Any preview thoughts before we get into it, Kelsey, next week? Are you excited about it?
I mean, after I watched the Deadpool movies, I basically walked away saying that he's like one of my favorite superheroes. So I'm excited to rewatch him. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. It'll be interesting because I've seen the first one, I think, only a few times. I've actually seen the second one, I think, more, because when I saw it, I don't know if you know, but they did release a PG-13 version of the second one called Once Upon a Deadpool around Christmas time, and it was basically him reading the story of Deadpool to what's his name? Princess Bride. Oh my God, people are going to kill me for forgetting his name.
Wesley?
Yes, the actor who plays him. Hold on. What is his name? I'm vamping. Fred Savage. So Fred Savage returns, and he's older, obviously, and Deadpool basically has him tied down to the bed, and he's forcefully reading the story of Deadpool 2 to him.
That's funny.
And this was done in a way because they wanted to get more audiences that were not of age to see the movie, because they thought, maybe if they see this movie, they'll want to see the R-rated versions when they're older or whatever. So they basically released it as a PG-13 movie, where basically all the cursing was taken out, all the graphic gore was taken out, and he kind of told the story as if it was a storybook to Fred Savage. So I have seen that. I'll be honest, though, the thing with the Deadpool movies, we'll talk more about it next week, the R rating, I feel like, is a character in and of itself. And without the R rating, I think you lose a lot. I kind of feel the same way about Logan and even the Wolverine, the extended edition. I think it adds a lot having an R rating and having a darker and more foul-mouthed story to tell. I don't think some movies require it, but I think Deadpool definitely does. So
yeah.
So they did release that second one. So I have seen the second one more. It'll be interesting to revisit it now, the R-rated version again. But if you have the time, check out Once Upon a Deadpool. If you're listening, and let us know what you think, because I'm not the biggest fan. I just think it was clearly a marketing ploy more than anything else, just to get more people to see it. When, let's be honest, if you're a 13-year-old kid who wants to see Deadpool, you found a way to see it in theaters. Even if you're not 17, you either had a parent take you or you snuck in. That's just what happens when it's an R-rated movie that everyone wants to see. So they did do that little publicity stint, but yeah, it's whatever. So we're excited to talk about those next week. Kelsey, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram, Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You can find me on TikTok, Cause13, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Cause Productions. Yep.
Doing lots of great things on that channel, including going on chicken wing hunts, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had wings last night, and I'm thinking of your channel when I was eating them. I was like, wow, Kelsey, this was fun.
Chicken wings are my favorite food. I get it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Fun fact about me.
There we go. I don't know what mine would be. Something Italian, probably. Like a good pasta, maybe some pesto. I don't even know. That's like a dish, though. In terms of a single food, I don't know.
I'd have to say my favorite food is chicken in general. I'll take chicken prepared anyway, but chicken wings, they take the cake. They're always good.
I don't know. I have to think about that. I will have an answer for next week. I will.
All right.
And you can find me at Dylan_Randazzo at Twitter, at Dylan Randazzo 417 at TikTok. That's my birthday, April 17th. Woohoo! And then Dill Pickle Movie Network on YouTube. If you are listening to us on podcast, thank you so much. Leave us a review, leave us a rating, and then come on over to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. Subscribe, like, and comment. Tell us what things you want us to talk about when we are not talking about Loki and Black Widow and finishing up this X-Men series. We have 2 more episodes left of the X-Men series, Deadpool and Deadpool 2 next week, New Mutants and Dark Phoenix the next week after that, which I believe, Kelsey, you haven't seen either of those, right?
No, I've seen Dark Phoenix.
Okay, but you haven't seen New Mutants, so it'll be interesting. Hear us, we'll talk about that for the first time. Stick around, we got a lot of great things on this channel. This week, I have 2 videos coming out for other series I have. I have a video for Framewreck talking about the movie Face Off coming out, and then I have a show, Picture This, where I go through all the nominees and winners of Oscars from the year 1944. We did a classic year this year. That'll be on Wednesday. You will get that video. And then Framewreck you will get to see later today on the channel. So Monday night, afternoonish, you will be able to see that. So a lot of great things coming to the channel. A lot of great things coming to Kelsey's channel, of course, all the time. It's a lot of fun. We'll see, but eventually. I'm
going to get back on that grind.
Right. You were busy being an adult and having an adult job and being awesome at it. So there you go. My job is sitting here entertaining you all, and I hope you all are entertained. So we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to Marvel-ous Mutant Mondays.